Aviation Museum in Broadhead, Wisconsin, and I'd like to show you the loveliest biplane in our collection. It's the Laird LCB. It's on display over the winter. I want to tell you the story. It's got a pretty cool story, pretty weird story, and it's a really cool and weird airplane, so let's check it out. This airplane was designed and built in Chicago in 1928 by Ami Laird. He's a really important figure in aircraft history. He built his first airplane when he was 15 years old. It was just a bicycle with glider wings, but I think it still counts. Anyway, by the 20s, he was an established aircraft designer and he had a little factory in Chicago. It was actually based on what is now the Chicago Midway Airport, but what was then called the Chicago Municipal Airport. Side note, our museum's founder, Al Kelch, was a big Ami Laird admirer, and in the 70s, the two guys actually became friends. Anyway, the Laird Aircraft Company made really high quality, limited edition kind of airplanes, so there were only about a dozen of this particular model built. And in 1928 it was built, it was sold, it went off, and then just like if you had a car and you took it back to the dealership and did a trade-in for a newer model, somebody did that with this airplane, and Ami Laird ended up owning it again in 1933, which was perfect timing and where the first part of our love theme in this story comes in, because Ami Laird was getting married and he and his wife Elsie wanted to take their honeymoon and needed an airplane to go in. So they hopped in this one and flipped a coin whether they would go to New York City or California. And they went to New York City. It was November, so I think that was probably a pretty cold flight, but anyway, they did it. This is the LCB model, the Laird Commercial Biplane. It's a little different from other biplanes of the era because the fuselage frame is made out of aluminum tubing instead of steel tubing. This is the fuselage, the frame is like the skeleton inside, and like I said, aluminum tubing and little clamps sold together with bracing wires. Other biplanes, like the Travel Air 4000 from 1928 also, they had a steel tubing frame that was welded together. The theory was the aluminum tubing frame could be a little bit lighter. This airplane actually, as a whole, is a little bit heavier than the Travel Air, but there's a lot of other components that go into that, so we can't blame the frame, but that rhymed. Imagine trying to climb up here in a wedding dress. I wouldn't do it. Anyway, this is where the love theme comes back to the story. So after their honeymoon, Ami Laird and his new wife Elsie came back to Chicago and they sold the airplane. It went through a few owners, but eventually ended up languishing away in storage, like a lot of biplanes did. And then into the story comes a man whose name was Ken Love. Like that was his real name. Anyway, he'd had his eye on the LCB model biplane for a while, and he eventually purchased this plane with the hopes of restoring it to flying quality. The LCB was and is powered by the J5 engine, the Wright Whirlwind J5. It was the cutting edge, the most expensive, the coolest engine in 1928. Why? Well, in 1927, Charles Lindbergh made his famous solo cross-Atlantic flight, and his plane, the Spirit of St. Louis, was powered by a J5, a brand new engine. After that, everybody wanted a J5. It was a very expensive engine. In 1928, you could buy a Waco or other kind of biplane without an engine for like $2,000, $2,500. If you bought it with a J5 engine, it would cost like $8,000 or $9,000 or $10,000. That's a lot of money back then. Even now, it's a lot of money. I think my car cost less. Anyway, this is a beautiful engine, J5. They're pretty rare today, and the Kelch Aviation Museum on the Broadhead Airport happens to be what we think is the largest collection of flying, restored, overhauled J5 engines. In the museum alone, right now we have 4. On the airport, Broadhead Airport, we have 5 flying J5s. And on the airport, we have a total of 9 if you count the ones that are currently being overhauled to fly. So that's like a world concentration right there. If you have anything better, let us know. This airplane may be on display in a museum, but it still has a lot of grease and oil and dead bugs stuck to it. Why? Because it still gets flown a lot, which is really cool, pretty special. In fact, this J5 engine has almost 500 hours of flight time on it, which is a lot. It's a pretty well-loved airplane, if you know what I mean. Which brings us back to the love theme of this story. So there's Ken Love. He has his airplane, he wants to restore it, but he's kind of busy, he has other stuff to do. He puts it off. We all do that. I put off making this video. But then a wonderful gentleman named Forrest Lovely comes into the picture. Yes, his name was Lovely. And he and a group of his friends got together, they wanted to restore the airplane, they made quick work of it. In under 2 years, it was back flying again. And in 1982, those guys were like, we just polished up this airplane, you know it would be really cool if Matty Laird and Elsie Laird were reunited with it. So they called them up and they were like, we pooled our money, you're flying here and you're going to go up in the honeymoon airplane again. So almost 50 years after their honeymoon in 1933, Elsie and Matty Laird were reunited with this airplane and they went for a ride together. Isn't that special? I love that story. Now, Forrest Lovely had a lot of airplanes, but he also had a little boy. His son Vaughn was 3 years old in 1982, and though he grew up seeing a ton of airplanes all the time, this Laird is the first airplane he has a memory of. So he grew up and he bought it. And now Vaughn owns the airplane. It's on display here at the Kelch Aviation Museum in Broadhead, Wisconsin this winter. You should come and see it for yourself. The museum is finally open after years of fundraising, preparation, and excitement. We would love to have you visit. We're open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Wednesdays through Sundays. Or you can call ahead and book a personalized tour for yourself or your school or your grandpa or anybody. So please come and visit us. We'll see you there. Don't leave yet. Remember, please, we are a non-profit and we are supported entirely by donations from folks like you. So please, come visit us. Drop $1 or $2 or $1 million in our donation box. Keep supporting us, the museum, and keeping the golden age of aviation alive and flying. Thanks. Anyway, now what? I think that's all.